Welcome to Powerhouse, where we interview the biggest names in housing and ask them about their strategy for growth. I'm Diego Sanchez, president of HousingWire, and my guests today are Scott Everett, president of Supreme Lending, and Sarah Middleton, chief growth and marketing officer, also at Supreme Lending. Scott and Sarah, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Diego, for having us on. Thrilled to be here.
We're going to have a great conversation today. Let's kick it off with Scott. You recently had your debut LinkedIn post, which announced that Supreme Lending would no longer be the best kept secret in mortgage. What inspired you to publish this post?
That one over there. We've been around a long time, 26 years, and my personality is probably one that's just, I don't mind staying silent and just kind of going about business without a lot of fanfare, et cetera. And, Sarah started here, 8 months ago-ish. And just sort of opened my eyes right in front of me to a whole different world of what's possible. So, credit most of that to Sarah, quite honestly.
Sarah, we had a great conversation when you joined Supreme, and we'll talk a little bit more about your first 7-8 months at the company. But how did you get Scott onto LinkedIn?
Yeah, it was something that needed to happen, and it was something that was necessary because he is a very, very kind of behind the scenes leader, but he's also a very special leader, Diego. And I continue to kind of poke him and say, well, how in the world do you think people are going to know about you I can certainly share it, and I'll continue to share it. I think it's very important that I share it, especially and our people here at Supreme. But I also thought it was very important for people to see who Scott really is, because, again, our industry is filled with people who don't always know, and so they tell their own stories. And I didn't like that because it's just, many things just were not true. And so I wanted to dispel that stuff, and I wanted people to see Scott for who he is. So, that was part of me asking him to start coming on social media to show the real side of Scott, which is very special.
Yeah, I got a sense from the post that, Scott, you're a pretty down-to-earth guy, and you run a great business at Supreme Lending. What is it about Supreme Lending that you think makes it the best kept secret in mortgage, or formerly the best kept secret in mortgage?
I think, look, there's a lot of great mortgage companies out there, and I'm honored to be in that even class of them. I think that one of the things that we do quite well is we just follow through on what we say we're going to do. We really genuinely try to do the right thing all the time. It's hard. We, as I said, 26 years doing it. It's hard because you have decisions literally every single day. We all went through 20 and 21 where there was massive growth. At what point do you lay off? Who do you lay off? How do you make those decisions? And those are all very, very difficult decisions that I take very heartfelt. So none of those come easy to me. And I think maybe just a simple empathy or empathetic approach to humans is something that is a differentiator between some. We're a totally private company. I started the company myself, and we've always only been me as a sole owner. And so I think that lends a little bit of responsibility, not that it's better or worse than anyone else. We never had private equity. Therefore, I don't have that level of pressure. I don't have to have an IRR or a MOIAC or any of those other things that private equities look for. And I suppose that can be good and bad. We have no debt, so we're allowed to grow or not grow as we see fit. And one of my sort of mantras is we will get as big as we can without changing the user. Sarah, yourself, every borrower, every employee is the user experience. So if that ever changes, then we'll stop that growth, just to make sure we keep that.
So it sounds like you've really funded your growth, from profitability of the company since you founded it.
Yeah, it's just been me since the day one. I think it's fiscal responsibility. I think it's conservatism. I think it's no debt. All the things that we did. I'm a pretty conservative fiscal guy. I don't wear a watch. I have a used car. I don't have a lot of those vices that I've seen others have. And in this business, with the ebbs and flows of the industry, and this business in particular, in this industry, I found that you can make more judicial decisions without having that laden over your head.
Yeah, my sense is you're not necessarily interested in being the biggest, although if you were the biggest, you wouldn't be averse to that. It's more important that you're the best.
Well, I would say let's first define best. Biggest doesn't necessarily mean the best, and neither does smallest, meaning you can't be the best. And I define best by how many lives do I get to enrich every day, week, month, year? Is the company solvent? 26 years, we've never tripped one covenant one time, which is probably a statistic I'm most proud of. We've never missed a payroll in 26 years. And that brings a lot of stability. I can look someone in the eye. When Sarah came to work here, she's got a husband and two children. And I said, we're never going to miss a payroll to her. And that's with all sincerity. And that's a really important basic need, but very, very important thing to be able to say to people. So, but for me, that's definition, Diego, of success.
Yeah, also important in mortgage because mortgage has booms and busts, and some people aren't able to follow through on their promises during those busts.
Yeah. I mean, Sarah, you might want to speak to that a little bit. You've certainly been in the business longer than both of us, so.
We're not going to bring up years on my age, right? But yes, I think there is a little bit of a benefit from 30s going into 30. If I can't even believe it, 38 years will be in. I know Scott's laughing at me. 38 years coming up in February, and I don't want to say, Diego, that I've seen it all, but I've seen a lot. And as you know, and again, I know we're going to touch on it down the road, I had a very thorough checklist that I was looking at prior to picking Supreme. And it's very hard today to find a place where what you say you're going to do, you do. And that was one of the tenets you and I talked about, the promises made, promises kept. And Scott does it, and the team. I always refer to it as Scott, but it's our entire team, and including me. We're very, very careful, and we're also cautious before we make a promise, because we also know how important it is to follow through on our word. I mean, people say it all the time, all you have today is your word. And, your handshake has to be worth something. And it was absolutely a true statement coming to Supreme. I will be 8 months in a few days. And everything that you and I talked about has happened and then some. So I haven't been underwhelmed in any of those 26 tenants. And there's even more to it too, because again, I'm not here to, blow smoke for Scott. I'm just saying it was just very, very difficult to find it out there. And also what I've experienced. And to Scott's point, he takes the lives of our employees very, very serious. And every single day we live up to the one core value, which I love it. We don't have, 12 of them on the wall that nobody can remember. We have one. And it's to enrich each other's lives, our clients' lives. And hopefully, Diego, you walk away from this going, you know what? I was enriched a little bit. And how can we help HousingWire? What can we do to support you better? I mean, that's always something we're asking ourselves. I call it supreme hospitality, which is another kind of term that I've been hanging on to recently, because I just think we all try to be hospitable to each other.
Yeah. Sarah, let's talk about your checklist a little more. We actually published your 26-point checklist on HousingWire. I thought it was so great. It was a checklist for how you were making the decision whether to join Supreme or not, or another mortgage company or not. How have your first 8 months either confirmed or denied the value of that 26-point checklist that you created?
Oh man, yes, there. And it was interesting too with Diego with that 26-point checklist. I had a lot of people reaching out, to obviously utilize it themselves in their own journey. But I also had companies, people reaching out from other companies challenging me that many of those things were not possible or probable in our industry. And I was like, look, this isn't up for debate. This was up for my own journey. I said, my journey is my journey. Your checklist may be different. But I also had the benefit, and Scott knows this, that Diego, you and I've talked about, I didn't have to go to work. At this point in my life, I want to change people's lives for the better. And if I couldn't do that somewhere, then I, felt like, well, maybe God is taking me into another chapter. But if I can keep doing it, so to the point of the 26 checklist, yes. Scott mentioned it, like what is the best? He is a very, very, very solid businessman. That was important to me. It was important to me that he knew what he was doing, from the cost to manufacture. You and I talked about this. That was critical for me because I've seen companies just create so much bloat with all of the different tech pieces that they bring in. And then that SaaS stack just goes out of control and it costs the loan officers. We're very, very efficient. That's important to me. That's how I grew up. That's how I lived my life. And I know that efficiency creates better rates, better comp, and are people able to make better money? And that's what I wanted. That's all there were a number of things on there. The other thing that I think, Diego, you and I talked about, I'm a super speedy person. I follow up, I respond. It's always kind of been my thing. Even as a kid, I was like first to the mailbox, beating my brother to get there first. I just always had to win to get there first. And it was so fun for me to hear from Scott, how he responds, how the company responds, and all of that has happened. I call it supreme speed. And I can't begin to tell you the joy, as dorky as I am, the joy that it gives me that we respond to every single one of our employees on any need they have from branch support, on average, 22 seconds.
Oh,
that's thrilling for me. Everybody has hobbies. Mine is let's respond, let's follow through. So anyway, all of it has happened and then some. So I'm thrilled.
I love hearing that. And Scott, I love that you had your first LinkedIn post. I love that we have you on your first podcast today. You were telling me before we recorded that you've never even listened to a podcast. So maybe that'll be a first too. You'll listen to this episode. And maybe we can even get you on a HousingWire stage at some point. That would be a great first.
We've talked about that, Diego, and we're committed to doing it this year. So
I love that.
Now look at her getting me to commit.
On air, right?
I know.
So a lot of firsts, which is amazing. For you, what's next for Supreme Lending? Not just this this path of trying to make it a less well-kept secret, but just how are you thinking about growth for 2026? How are you thinking about where you're going to take Supreme Lending next?
Yeah, was fortunate to grow up in a household that my folks had a software company for some 25 years in the Northeast. And so I sat on that board for 8 years. So when I started the company, it was quite an impetus or a focus on technology. I used to tell people we're a technology company that just happens to do mortgages. And over the term, when I first threw away my first fax machine, in 2000 and started e-scanning, we had a scanner in my house when I was 18. Just fun things. And I think we're on the precipice of another revolution in the industry and in America, probably the world as a whole with AI. And what does that really mean? There's a lot of fanfare. I asked my capital markets guy the other day, I said, do you think that AI is the equivalent of Y2K? And if you go back, look at the history of the world. When the wheel came out, they said no one would form communities anymore, colonies, because they'd all leave. When the airplane came out, there would be no more cities because people would fly. When the internet came out, we would have no more jobs. And Y2K came, everything was going to crash. I'm not diminishing the value I believe will be transcended through the marketplace through AI and other various and sundriest technological advances, but I think there's going to be a balance there, and I think I want to stay on the front and cutting edge of that. I think that, I remember I don't know if you knew this, Diego, but we were in Compass's beta on Banker some 20 years ago. Yeah, when I sat in the room in Vegas with Jonathan Core and Sig Anderman, just two terrific guys, and came out and told me about the whole thing. Well, they said, we have this product, and it was this. They introduced the concept to me of SaaS, software as a service, at that time, of which I said, I think what's going to happen is that's going to have a challenging effect throughout the industry. And I think you're seeing that come full circle now with some of the various and sundriest moves they made with the cancellation of the SDK and those charges. Now that's another hidden SaaS. Let's be very clear on that. And those continue to have ripples through the industry. So my goal is maybe a little bit different than some folks' goals. I don't focus solely on growth. Sarah asked me today, what's our growth model? She said in her past careers, which she's worked at some wonderful, wonderful companies her whole career, I don't really focus on that. I want to focus on, all right, what's our SaaS strategy? How are people going to either snap us, or how are we going to? So every software we do, we either build it or buy it. Every single one, we evaluate it from that same perspective. And I think those are things, because I think if you focus on that, the people, the technology, the cost to produce, the rest will take care of itself. I have never been a good media person or a marketer, self-proclaimed. That's my first podcast and LinkedIn and everything. But Sarah's just so terrific at that. Meeting people like you, it's just been wonderful. So I'm not as worried about that. I have great people to help with that. But I'm focused on the business per se.
Yeah, let's dig in on technology a little bit, because we're seeing several lenders move away from the partnership or vendor ecosystem and build a lot of stuff themselves, build their own LOS, build their own POS, even some folks tinkering with CRMs and PPEs, all the different elements of the loan origination stack. Are you thinking about those kinds of decisions as well, and whether you need to build yourself?
Well, interesting. Like I said, every single decision we make, we either build or buy. So I remember when Optimal Blue came out, a guy by the name of Larry Huff owned it. So Larry's from Dallas, where I'm from, or live. And we met for lunch. And I said, well, I philosophically disagree with your strategy about putting the best price every time. Well, that was 20 years ago. Well, it worked then, because if you had to change a loan program from, Chase to wherever, ABC, you could. And LO Comp was a derivative of gross price. Well, when LO Comp change came out, we weren't allowed to do that any longer, and therefore we had to pay him $125 no matter what. And that really hurt a lot of people. That another reason that I believe some of the lenders have had some struggles with net earnings. We built our own. 20 years ago, we built our own PPE. So we've only used that for 20 years. We built our own accounting system. When I originally did that deal with Encompass, I actually bought the code from them. So there was a lot of things that I think from a philosophical perspective, I just kind of like to think about where we're going and hopefully strategize and position us in the best light to try to succeed in those ever-changing environments. They're going to be quick. They're going to be fast. The as you referenced, sort of encompasses move. There are some that are coming out with their own PPEs. Those are very, very, very big decisions. A PPE, a POS, and certainly an LOS, other things. There's a lot of, it's not just creating it. It's then how you're going to support it. How are you going to be able to have the infrastructure to be able to change with the times? Are you going to build, what architecture are you going to build it? What platform are you going to build it on? Are you agile? Are you, especially with AI right now, there's just a lot of things that you have to really consider those things in moving forward from a technological perspective.
Yeah, you got to build a big technology team inside your company to, like you said, build, but more importantly, maintain those systems.
That's right. And it's a lot of the code. I mean, if you look at some of the softwares, they're on flat file systems, some are on SQL, some are moving to new languages, et cetera, et cetera. And those are big, big monumental decisions because we don't know quite where we're going yet, I believe.
So, Sarah, how do you translate Scott's vision for, making sure the tech stack is really solid and making sure the business is very sound? How do you translate that vision into growth for Supreme Lending? That's your role. You're the chief growth officer.
Yeah.
How do you make that happen?
If I might opine in the middle, Sarah,
yeah,
first.
Please, go ahead.
I'll tell you two things, Diego. It's funny. You probably sense Sarah and I have become good friends as well in a very short order. We talk all the time. We text all the time. We're both kind of freaky with that. And it's just a wonderful friendship. So I'm very curious about her answer here because I don't think she's figured it out. Honestly, Sarah, I mean, I'm not trying to sound like funny. It's just a hard thing because I'm a weird little thinker over here in this little weird think tank. And I think she's like, God, you're weird, dude.
Scott is unique. I wouldn't say he's weird. One of the things for me was I wanted to run with someone who would challenge me, Diego. And he's right. It has been a head scratcher for me that Supreme isn't much bigger, just from volume, et cetera, because it is such a wonderful, special place. But I also attribute that a little bit to I don't know that Scott needed it or really cared about it until correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, till you started looking for my position for chief marketing and chief growth. And so, Diego, to answer your question, I believe everything in life can be translated if you can tell the story. And my job is to effectively tell the story of Supreme and for it to translate that essence, that hospitality, all of the wonderful things of who we are to the right people that we want to have here. And I'm tweaking and crafting and continuing to adjust how I tell that story as more and more time goes on, because Scott is right. I have come from in the past, sometimes growth just for growth's sake, because the company I worked for wanted to be number one. And I think people are aware of that. They know I was president of Fairway, and that was Steve's goal. He wanted to be number one, and so that drove everything we did every day in prior life. Coming here, that's not Scott's goal. Scott's goal is it the right people? Can we effectively enrich their life? Can we keep the promises that we make to them? And how do we do that without upsetting our own ecosystem and this amazing culture that he and the team have worked at for 26 years? And I don't want to change that, because that's why it is the way it is. It's so special. And, I've said it to him, I'm having the time of my life. I'm enjoying my career more now than I have my entire career. And I've had some great runs and great people I've worked for, not to downplay any of that. They've been wonderful. But I feel like I get to play for the Dodgers. And I think, yeah, I even mentioned it to you. I'm like, I get to run with the best. I get to play with the best. And, that's the other thing. Scott is able to attract the very, very best people to the team, and they are incredibly loyal to him. There's strong tenure. They stay with him, and that chemistry, you don't create that overnight. I feel so lucky. Today I was reflecting on it, doing my devotional stuff. I'm like, man, the chemistry of this team, you can't just create that out of air. That's tough, and he's done that.
Yeah, the chemistry and leadership is so important. Chemistry and collaboration at the leadership level, and also a culture that sounds like it's really robust. Scott, does having that chemistry and that culture make you nervous about considering M&A? I know there are a lot of opportunities out there, a lot of places that maybe wouldn't mind selling, and owners that wouldn't mind selling. How do you feel about M&A?
Great. We've done 2 so far this year, Sarah and I, and they've been terrific. And a big part of it, probably saw the first one was My Mutual out of Michigan. It was 2 brothers that owned it. Terrific, terrific guys. They had it for almost 30 years. They were in their late 60s. Ironically, I think at the end of the day, they ended up choosing Supreme because they owned Woodies, old boats, old wooden boats. Well, I happen to own one. I own a 64 Lyman. And their boat mechanic is on Lake Winnipesaukee, as you and I chatted from being at the Northeast Diego. And so it was funny, and I think that was part of it. But I think it synthesized the reason that they chose us was woody boats. You have to have a certain psyche to have that kind of boat. And clearly we both had it, and it was just an instant win. And so I think what Sarah is saying is maybe Supreme isn't perfect for everybody, and that's okay. Like I told you, the first question was, I'm very proud of the fact we've been 26 years. We've never tripped one covenant. And I put that record up against, most of my warehouse people say that no one else can say that, or not many. There's some, certainly. But it's a mindset. And what do you value, right? And I valued that. I value being good, a stable place that you can work at, and you can tell your wife, we're going to have a paycheck this month, this week, this year. That's very important. And people forget that. Sounds trite, but it's not.
No, it sounds right to me. We've done 4 acquisitions since I joined HousingWire, and it's been all about the cultural fit. I think that's what leads to a successful transaction in a lot of cases. Is you have that cultural fit, which enables you to work through some of the obstacles that inevitably come up in every deal. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, it's interesting, even on that front, because there's a lot of great, great companies out there. And, we're still a little bit in the hangover from 2021. And maybe some of the decisions that needed to be made were hard decisions. They involve people that your friends, your family members, your loved ones. And sometimes an outsider can be a bad guy and help smooth those decisions so that the current owner doesn't have to make those. And that wasn't the case of My Mutual. There's been a few others we've done. And not that you have to be a bad guy or a good guy, but we round the corner so quickly. One of the guys that does some recruiting for me says, do you want great companies that are making tons of money right now? I go, no, I want the ones that are hard workers, honest people, and they're losing money. That's what I want. Because I know within 90 days, both those examples, we went in and turned them right around, and they're turning a profit in 90 days. Through technology, through great service, through things that they just didn't know. A very, very strong balance sheet. We have billions of dollars of lines of credit. We're a Fannie Freddie Ginnie seller servicer. We have every single product under the sun, licensed in all 50 states plus Puerto Rico. All the things of a very large mortgage banker, we are, but we don't have to scream it. We can still be picky. We still want to enrich the lives of those M&A candidates. And I actually think it's a terrific strategy for us to get out there more in that regard.
Sarah, do you have anything to add on M&A? It sounds like you and Scott are doing deals.
We are, and it's really fun. I had not been involved in M&As other than being a part of one way back with Guild, where I was absorbed into Guild. And I hadn't been actively, we didn't do them prior life. So it's been really fun for me, Diego. And I was telling a gentleman yesterday, Scott and I were on with, that we're looking to work with him on more opportunities, that I didn't know any different what the absorption rate would be. And my mutual it's just been fantastic. We have retained 97%.
Hmm.
I know.
It's crazy.
And then I learned, industry standard is around 75. And part of it is that that extreme hospitality that I was talking about. And also that absolute laser goal every single day to enrich their lives. And so everybody comes at it from that aspect, because again, Scott sets that tone at the top. That's what I believe to the core of my being, is if you take really, really good care of people, you genuinely care about them, you follow through with what you say you're going to do, you show up, and all those things, people want to be here. And it's been so fun for us, Diego, for me especially,
Well, the other
with
thing too,
these
Sarah, if
two.
you think about it too, is so philosophically, Diego, I hate to continue to go back to the tech piece of it, but what we learned early on is we did one deal quite early on, and we forced them right away to change. They actually be on Encompass. This is 5 years ago. Come right on our system. Well, as you know, Encompass, you can set it up. It's very a la carte, and they didn't like it. And our retention, Sarah, was probably 45%, 40%. So now, philosophically, we've changed. So we have a data warehouse that sits in the middle of all of our tech. And so right now, I think we're running 3 or 4 different iterations of LOSs, because of some of the ones, I would even call an iteration of Encompass its own LOS, kind of, because of the way you can configure it. And we have 3 or 4 others that we support. But again, philosophically, if you take that data, strip it down, bring it into a data warehouse, I can run my reports out of there, and I can then push back into it. So it's seamless for the end user. And then whether it's 3, 6, 9, or a year, months time, they generally want to switch over because we have so many other services that augment the user experience that they are actually asking us now to come on the other system. Again, we can do it either way. And I think, again, to your question of technology, being light of foot and being able to switch around, really, particularly in the M&A world, it's imperative.
So wrapping with this question again on M&A, it sounds like you've done more tuck-in type deals where you buy someone, you get them on your platform, within 90 days, bam, they're profitable and flowing on the Supreme platform. Are you also thinking about bigger swings in terms of M&A, where you'd buy a bigger company and there'd be a little bit more integration work involved?
Yeah, I mean, I look at all the deals that have been done in the last 2 years, and every single one of those we had a bid in. And the problem, again, Sarah's going to kill me for being too honest, but the problem is it's very straightforward. And there's got to be a few things. Like, winning is when both parties lose a little. That's winning.
Yeah.
And some people,
That's a Scottism, Diego.
some people don't quite understand
down.
that. And they always want to win. And that's not a partnership to me. And I just won't do it.
Yeah.
Again, we don't need it. So we make judicial decisions about the success of both parties, not me or not you. It has to be both. And the people that we've had the opportunity and the pleasure to partner with in M&A have both seen it that way. And only time with some of the others that I think we haven't been able to do the deals is either they were lied to on the way in, and then all of a sudden everything changes. I got those calls too. This has been a nightmare. Or the owner sails off, in the sunset, and the retention is, as Sarah spoke, 30-40%. And that's not an M&A deal to me. That's an acquisition that didn't feel good.
I love that everyone has to lose a little bit. I get HousingWire frequently gets accused of being biased towards one end of the political spectrum or another. And I like when I'm getting yelled at by both sides because that means we're probably somewhere down the middle,
right.
and just pissing everybody off.
Yeah, that's good.
So that really resonates with me, Scott. Listen, this has been a fantastic conversation. I would love to continue it at a future HousingWire event. I think there's so much for us to talk about. But Scott, thank you so much for doing your first podcast with HousingWire. And Sarah, so great to speak to you again today.
Yeah, it's a really, really nice day. I appreciate the time. I appreciate reaching out. It's you're a great interviewer, and you're very patient, and you're a great listener. I tell Sarah, 2 ears, one mouth, use accordingly, and you you very well do that. So thank you. Thanks, Sarah, for attending too.
Oh yeah, thank you. As always a pleasure, Diego. We love you guys, and we're here to support any way we can. Hopefully you were enriched today, Diego. Hopefully.
Absolutely. This was great.
Diego, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, please.
What do you think you learned today that either you didn't know and or that you were most surprised about this whole last half an hour?
The interesting thing was your deep dive into tech. And that's an area that I think I'd like to go deeper with you at some point, because I agree with you that being nimble when it comes to tech, having a really solid platform that your team is comfortable with and can win with, it's pretty underrated. And I think AI is going to, disrupt a lot of what it means to have that tech stack in mortgage. And so you're thinking about all that stuff. That's really interesting. I like to hear that.
That's great. Yeah. And you can probably feel I'm pretty comfortable. I like the discussions. I don't mind APIs and SDKs and all the little jargon and all that other fun stuff, because I think it's a competitive advantage, actually, if you're comfortable in that. You generally don't get taken advantage of. When salespeople come trying to pitch this or that and say it's a must-have, simply why is a fair question.
We're a business media company, so we don't originate mortgages, but typically media companies are not thought of as like super technical companies. But I really view we have a big technology team on the product development and the engineering side. Because we think about it differently. I do think it's a competitive advantage, especially for us, where we want to integrate lots of really interesting data into our journalism. You can't do that without building some stuff yourself, or building a lot of stuff yourself.
How do you think AI will affect your world?
It's already having a huge impact, in terms of the ability for editorial teams to scale up without adding a ton of people, finding the story, understanding the story, figuring out, changes in the data in terms of the housing market that are interesting from an editorial perspective. We're exploring that quite a bit with AI right now. We actually just hired an editor, and most of what she is doing is building assistance with AI to find interesting insights and all this proprietary data we have on the national and local housing markets across the country. It's a full-time job. And she's going to really empower our newsroom to write much more interesting stories. So it's already happening, and I think it's pretty exciting.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think regardless of industry, I think staying as a pioneer, obviously you are, that's going to bode well for you in the future.
Well, again, thank you both so much. This has been amazing.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.